Continuing from the previous episode 362. Chapter 1291. Sect Chief positioned the 1,000-feet giant stood in the sky. An ocean-like vast and mighty Btth spread from within the body of the giant. It appeared just like a thick cloud, wind lightning rolled while it swallowed and released. Yaohua Liangjun's face was pale. However, both of his eyes were completely dark and dense. His gaze locked onto Xiaoyan in the sky as his throat suddenly emitted a low cry. Go and die. The seal formed by Yaohua Liangjun's hand changed. The giant that stood in the sky suddenly strided forward. Following this step, a wild wind immediately blew across the entire sky. Cloud churned. Even the sky itself had fluctuated. Bang! The giant stepped forward. Its large hand appeared to firmly grabbed onto the naturally energy. Immediately, a shocking bright intense glow erupted on his fist. His large hand was swung and the space immediately split apart. Frightening wind mercilessly smashed violently towards Xiaoyan in the distant sky. This punch from the giant appeared to carry the natural energy. A ferocious hurricane formed on his hand. Even the square on the ground had formed some arm-thick crack lines because of this pressure. Such a shocking attack was indeed worthy of a 6-star Dozun class expert. Under the giant that was filled with an endless amount of pressure, quite a number of weaker flower sect's disciples had pale faces. A battle of this level was something that they seldom saw. That frightening attack that could easily destroy an entire mountain range caused their hearts to tremble. This Yaohua Liangjun has also used all of his strength. Some elders of the flower sect felt quietly awed in their hearts while they continued to add Btth to the defense when they saw this. It was unexpected that Xiaoyan was actually able to force Yaohua Liangjun to such an extent with his 2-star Dozun strength. He was indeed worthy of being Yao Chen's disciples. Yun Yun revealed a worry on her beautiful face as she stood on the square. Although her heart believed in Xiaoyan's strength, no one could remain calm in the face of this full-force attack by Yaohua Liangjun. Xiaoyan's figure was suspended in the sky. The bone wings on his back flapped. That powerful wind pressure that was transmitted over from a great distance firmly pressed his robe until it adhered onto his body. That rushing wind sound rumbled like a thunder beside his ear, seemingly intending on shattering his eardrum. This is the full-force attack of a 6-star Dozun, Xiaoyan gently exhaled. A glint flashed across his eyes as he softly muttered to himself. Immediately, he slowly raised his hand and the palm-sized annihilation fire lotus slowly rotated. This tiny exquisite lotus flower contained a true destructive force. Go! Xiaoyan smiled slightly as he raised his hand. The fire lotus in it rushed out and immediately formed a beautiful firetail in the midair as it charged towards the seemingly unmatched giant. Break it! Yaohua Liangjun did not dare to slight the fire lotus when he saw it flashing over. His hand seal changed and the giant immediately roared towards the sky. A frightening sonic wave spread and directly formed a giant hurricane. That enormous hand was clenched and it actually forcefully grabbed the hurricane. After which, it took a large stride forward in front of everyone's shocked eyes, swung the hurricane and violently smashed towards the seemingly rice grain-like fire lotus. The two collided and a momentary silence occurred. It was as though the entire world had stilled at this moment. The silence lasted for an instant before an earth-shaking explosion finally resounded over the sky in an abrupt manner. That furious thunder-like explosion shook the entire mountain range. Soon after the explosion, a firestorm swept over the sky. Under the raging firestorm, that 100-feet large giant was also torn until Btth surged like a water pillar. However, these Btth that had just made contact with the firestorm when it was vaporized by the frightening high temperature into nothingness. Bang! The firestorm heavily collided onto the body of the giant. The vast and mighty Btth that was on his body also began to swiftly disappear. Bang! Xiaoyan inhaled a deep breath of hot air. His body rushed backwards and a sharp cry was emitted from his mouth. Following this cry, the firestorm that was filled with a destructive force finally completely exploded at this moment. Bang! The frightening firestorm smashed heavily onto the giant's body. An incomparably strong force directly caused the giant to continuously step backwards. Even his body had vaguely become illusory. Bang bang bang! The fire wave that contained a destructive strength continuously spread apart. Terrifying high temperature directly caused all the moisture in this place to vaporized. Under the continuous attack by the fire wave, the giant's body also became increasingly illusory. At the end, it was finally exploded and turned into nothingness under this muffled sound. Puff! How is this possible? The giant was blasted apart and a mouthful of fresh blood was spat out from Yahoo Liangjun's mouth. A disbelief surged within his eyes. However, he did not have any time to be shocked at this moment. The fire wave that contained a destructive force had came rushing over with lightning-like speed after forcing back the giant. If he was struck by it, it was likely Yahoo Liangjun would instantly be annihilated. Yahoo Liangjun suppressed the shock within his heart. He clenched his teeth and circulated his do qi. His body transformed into a lightning that suddenly withdrew explosively. Yahoo Liangjun's speed was extremely quick. Within the blink of an eye, he had already broken through the do qi barrier around the square. That fire wave also followed closely behind in front of the shocked gazes from the many flower sect's elders. Finally, it violently collided onto the barrier. Bang! The enormous defensive barrier shook violently. Ripples spread rapidly. Fortunately, it did not collapse immediately. Those elders from the flower sect were just about to sigh in relief after seeing this when another destructive fire wave spread. It heavily struck onto the do qi barrier like an enormous hammer. Crack! This time around, the do qi barrier had finally reached its limit. The barrier exploded amidst a cracking sound. Having lost the obstruction of the do qi barrier, the fire wave spread apart without any fear. Seeing this scene, the faces of those flower sect's disciples around the square immediately turned pale. Oh! However, when the fire wave was about to spread across the enormous square, an elderly sigh slowly resounded over the sky. Immediately, a figure suddenly appeared in a flash. She waved her sleeve and an invisible ripple spread. Finally, the ripple collided with the fire wave. The two energies eroded each other before slowly being destroyed. First elder. Seeing this figure, who had suddenly intervened, the faces of some of the elders from the flower sect revealed a joyous expression. Xiao Yan, are you planning to destroy my flower sect? That white-haired old woman, who had suddenly appeared in the sky, looked towards Xiao Yan in the distance and spoke somewhat helplessly. The pale-faced Xiao Yan was somewhat embarrassed when he heard this. He could sense the frightening strength of this white-haired old woman. Immediately, he ceased daring to act impudent. He cupped in his hands together and said, "The situation leaves me with no choice. I hope that elder will not blame me." After uttering these words, he took out a couple of medicinal pills from his storage ring and stuffed them into his mouth. Subsequently, he turned his eyes towards Hua Jin. At this moment, the latter's face was filled with horror. The eyes, which she used to look at Xiao Yan, appeared as though they had seen a ghost. She had never expected that Xiao Yan would actually be able to unleash a frightening attack that even Yahoo Liangjun was unable to receive. Kai! Yahoo Liangjun's miserable figure had once again rushed back from the distance. His expression was dark and gloomy as he stood in the sky. It was still possible to see a trace of blood on the corner of his mouth. He understood that he had already left the area of the square and had lost the right to compete. In other words, Yahoo Liangjun, was defeated in the hands of a mere two-star Do Zun in front of so many people today. The corner of Yahoo Liangjun's mouth twitched slightly. His face was so gloomy that it was frightening. Those gazes that were shot over from all over the place were just like needles that pierced into him, causing his entire body to feel terrible. Xiao Yan glanced at Yahoo Liangjun in the distance from the sky. He ignored the latter and slowly landed from the sky. Without saying anything, he glanced at Hua Jin a short distance away and rubbed his hands in front of him. 4 heavenly flames once again appeared in front of him. I admit defeat. Seeing the 4 types of flames appearing once again, the originally pale expression of Hua Jin turned ghastly white. Even Yahoo Liangjun, someone with a 6-star Do Zun strength, was unable to receive it. If she was at the receiving end, it was likely that she would not even be able to escape. Hence, she hurriedly screamed. Xiao Yan smiled faintly upon hearing her scream. He opened his mouth and swallowed the 4 types of heavenly flames into his body. With his current strength, he did not possess the ability to continuously use the Annihilation Fire Lotus twice. It appeared that this woman was frightened by Yahoo Liangjun's fate. The many elders from the flower sect shook their heads slightly when they saw Hua Jin admit defeat. The match today was really a joke. A 4-star Dozun and a 6-star Dozun were defeated in the hands of a 2-star Dozun. If this matter was to spread, it would really be a source of a joke. I have not disappointed. Xiao Yan turned his head. He looked towards Yun Yun, who had widened her red lips and had a stunned expression on her pretty face. After which, he coughed softly and laughed. You still like to act bravely. Yun Yun watched Xiao Yan's face that also contained a paleness. She involuntarily glared at him. Her tone had some reprimand and a different kind of joy. That first elder from the flower sect in the sky also gently sighed. His eyes turned towards Hua Jin and spoke faintly, since you have lost, hand the jade token of the chief to Yun Yun. Hua Jin's hand was immediately clenched tightly when she heard this. However, she could not eat her words in public. Immediately, she could only clench her teeth and took out the jade token from her storage ring before ruthlessly throwing it towards Yun Yun. The first elder of the flower sect turned her eyes towards Yun Yun. She smilingly said, I trust the eyes of the previous chief. Yun Yun, in the future, you will be the next chief of the flower sect. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Continuing from the previous episode 363. Chapter 1292. Refining Yun Yun did not extend her hand to receive the chief's jade token as she watched it being suspended in front of her. She was really not interested in this sect chief position. Moreover, due to the shadows from those matters back then, the thing that she was most unwilling to do was to be some chief of a sect. Take it, Xiao Yan urged when he saw the hesitation on Yun Yun's face. It was still all right if he did not open his mouth. The moment he did so, however, Yun Yun could not resist glaring at him. She gritted her silver teeth and said, receive it. And allow you to try and act mightily again? Xiao Yan was involuntarily a little embarrassed when he heard this. He said, it has been so many years, yet you still remember these matters. No one was right or wrong in the incident back then. Although I have destroyed the Misty Cloud sect, the Misty Cloud sect has also caused my Shao clan to suffer great losses. I am aware that this matter is unrelated to you, but I must still account for certain things. I do not know about all of these great reasons. Yun Yun's eyes reddened a little when she mentioned this matter. She was also aware that Xiao Yan was not wrong in that matter when looking from his perspective. However, the Misty Cloud sect was after all a place that had groomed her for many years. Yet, it was disbanded back then just because this fellow had said so. If you wish to find a quiet place to stay, you will not achieve true peace by living under someone else like in the past. Additionally, you have received the inheritance of Granny Hua. If you do not take this position, it will end up causing the flower sect to ultimately descend into an internal fight. I think that Granny Hua would be unwilling to see such a thing, right? Xiao Yan asked softly. Yun Yun was startled. She hesitated for a moment before finally nodding her head. After which, she raised her head and looked towards the white-haired old woman in the sky. She spoke respectfully, First Elder, Yun Yun can temporarily take the position of the sect chief. You can just inform me if you feel that there is a more suitable person. Ha ha, you can be rest assured that this old woman greatly trusts the eyes of the previous sect chief. Since she had passed on all her do qi to you, it is likely that you are the perfect candidate in her heart. The white-haired old woman laughed. Hua Jin's face became dark and volatile when she heard the words of this old woman. A moment later, she spoke in a deep voice, First Elder, I have worked hard for many years in order to get the Profound Sky sect to show signs of joining hands with our flower sect. Now that the sect chief is changed and that Xiao Yan had even injured Yao Liang, lover, I think that this cooperation will not only end but the Profound Sky sect would also not let this matter rest, given the way they do things. The threat in Hua Jin's words were also quite obvious. If the chief was changed to Yun Yun, not only would they be unable to cooperate with the Profound Sky sect, but it would instead cause the Profound Sky to view the flower sect with enmity. The white-haired old woman knitted her brows slightly. Although the flower sect and Profound Sky sect were equally ranked as the two sects, the former's strength was not as strong as the latter. Additionally, the Profound Sky sect was really too strong. It had been expanding rapidly during these years. The sect had numerous number of experts. An ordinary faction would not dare to offend them even a little. This Yaohua Liangjun was a member of the Profound Sky sect. Originally, they planned on getting Yaohua Liangjun and Hua Jin to marry to improve the relationship between both sects and hence form an alliance. The Flower Sect and the Profound Sky Sect might be called the two sects, but there were many factions on the Central Plains which could match these two sects. However, these factions did not wish to be as publicized as them. Nevertheless, the foundation of these sects would not be any weaker than the two sects. If one accompanies a tiger, one will ultimately end up being its meal. Xiaoyan smiled slightly. He ignored Yaohua Liangjun's densely cold eyes as he spoke faintly. First Elder, I think that you should be clearer than me when it comes to the way the Profound Sky Sect does things. If the two sects form an alliance, it is likely very difficult for a true equilibrium to be reached. Sooner or later, a situation where the guest will try to take over the position of the owner will occur. At that time, the Flower Sect will likely become another branch sect of the Profound Sky Sect. Xiaoyan, you should stop uttering nonsense. Hua Jin cried out. Her expression changed upon hearing this. Xiaoyan completely ignored this woman. His eyes looked towards the white-haired old woman and said, If First Elder do not mind, my Falling Star Pavilion can perhaps be a reliable ally of the Flower Sect in the future. I'm sure that First Elder will not have any doubt given the trustworthiness of my teacher, right? KK, Yao Zunjie's reputation is extremely great. Who in the Central Plains do not know about his trustworthiness? Naturally, no one can doubt him. The white-haired old woman smiled. Immediately, she nodded. Her eyes were a little stern as she looked towards Hua Jin. She spoke in a deep voice. From now onwards, Yun Yun is the chief of the Flower Sect. There shall be no more argument. This First Elder had made up her mind once Xiaoyan's words sounded. If it was in the past, a Falling Star Pavilion did not possess the weight to cause her to ignore everything else. However, things were currently different. The Falling Star Pavilion had produced an elite Ban Sheng like Yao Chen. Its strength would definitely soar. At that time, even the Profound Sky Sect will not dare to do anything to it. One was an old faction, which had some ill intentions and would sooner or later bite at them. Another was a new and rising faction that possessed an enormous potential and trustworthiness. It was actually not difficult to choose between the two. Seeing the white-haired old woman hardening her heart with the intention of allowing Yun Yun to be the sect chief, the expression of Hua Jin also became ugly. However, she did not continue to say anything. She also understood that it was pointless to say anything now. Since First Elder has made such a choice, this venerable self can only hope that you will not end up regretting in the future. Yaohua Liangjun's expression was also quite ugly. Today, he had not only lost face but had even ruined a big matter. It would definitely not be easy for him to report this matter when he returned this time around. You need not be concerned about this matter. The white-haired old woman waved her hand and spoke faintly. The corner of Yaohua Liangjun's mouth twitched slightly. The matter had already been decided and it was pointless for him to remain here and embarrass himself. Immediately, he swung his sleeve, turned around and rushed out of the Flower Sect. When he turned around, his eyes were filled with a sinister and vicious expression as they looked at Xiaoyan. Clearly, after having lost a great amount of face today, he had completely hated Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan merely smiled in the face of his eyes. A 6-star Do Zun was indeed powerful, but he was currently not an ordinary person either. Even if this fellow wanted to use some tricks, Xiaoyan would not be afraid of him. Hua Jin saw Yaohua Liangjun left in a furious manner. She wanted to retain him but was unable to say anything. After clenching her teeth, she did not follow him. Instead, she turned around and rushed towards a mountain, vanishing in the blink of an eye. The eyes of the white-haired old woman slowly swept over the entire place when she saw these two people leaving. She softly said, From today onwards, Yun Yun shall be the new chief of our Flower Sect. All the disciples of the Flower Sect must obey her orders. Otherwise, they will be punished according to the sect rules. Understood. When the voice of the old woman sounded, those densely packed Flower Sect disciples on the square also hurriedly knelt down. A respectful voice resounded over the place. Greeting to the sect chief. Xiaoyan smiled slightly as he watched the densely packed disciples kneeling down. He looked at Yun Yun, who was feeling some panic, and said, Congratulations, Sect Chief Yun Yun. Yun Yun rolled her eyes towards him. She immediately sighed in a distant manner. Each time this fellow appeared, it would cause some changes in her life. He is really an enemy. The ceremony for Yun Yun obtaining the chief position was not very grand. However, with that First Elder of the Flower Sect presiding over it, everything was done in a standard manner. After the ceremony was over, Yun Yun had formally become the next sect chief of the flower sect. Xiao Yan was not in a hurry to leave after the ceremony was over. Instead, he got Yun Yun to help him find a quiet room. The hidden resistance within the bone-chilling flame had already completely disappeared. It was the best opportunity to swallow and refine it. Moreover, this flower sect also possessed quite a number of experts present. This was indeed not a bad place to refine the bone-chilling flame. With the increase in the strength of the experts whom Xiao Yan had come into contact with, he needed to raise his strength as quickly as possible. Although he no longer needed to be afraid when facing an expert like Yaohua Liangjun, his enemy was not Yaohua Liangjun but the Hall of Soul. Xiao Yan had already witnessed the strength of the 9th Tianjun and 8th Tianjun of the Hall of Soul. He clearly understood in his heart that it would likely be an intense big battle should he meet any one of those two. Most importantly, even after the intense fight, his chances of victory was not high. Although Yao Lao had advanced to an elite Ban Sheng, it was impossible for Xiao Yan to always follow behind Yao Lao. Therefore, raising his own strength was the most important thing. A faint fragrance was being emitted from a cauldron within the quiet room, causing a smoke to linger within it. When one inhaled a gentle breath, all of one's distracting thoughts would disappear from one's mind at this moment. Xiao Yan was quite satisfied with this quiet room. He nodded slightly before sitting down on a stone bed. However, he did not immediately attempt to swallow and refine the bone-chilling flame. His use of the Annihilation Fire Lotus when fighting Yaohua Liangjun earlier had exhausted quite a lot of his Do Qi. Refining the bone-chilling flame was not a relaxing task. He naturally had to be well prepared. This training continued for around half an hour before Xiao Yan's tightly shut eyes were finally slowly opened. His eyes had once again regained its calmness. At a glance, they appeared just like an abyss that was without the slightest fluctuation. "Hu!" A mouthful of turbid air was slowly spat out from his throat. A faint glow also surfaced on Xiao Yan's face. Both of his eyes were blinked and traces of dense white flame spread out from deep within his eyes. In the blink of an eye, both of his eyes were already covered by the denso white flame. "Refinement. Begin," Xiao Yan muttered softly in his mouth. The seal formed by his hand changed. Both of his eyes were slowly shut. Following the shutting of his eyes, the temperature of the room also rose slowly. Xiao Yan's heart possessed quite a great amount of anticipation towards the refinement this time around. Although a heavenly flame of the bone-chilling flame ranking was no longer considered some sumptuous meal after he had swallowed the 3,000 burning flame, it was also not something that he could underestimate. Most importantly, the current flame mantra was already at the D-class high level. He wondered if, after swallowing the bone-chilling flame, it could leap and become a Tien-class Qi method? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Continuing from the previous episode 364. Chapter 1293. Unusual natural phenomenon. The fragrance from sandalwood lingered over the quiet room, which had an unusually dry and hot air. High temperature spread and even the space itself formed some distortion. At a glance, it gave one an illusionary feeling. Xiao Yan was seated on a stone bed within the quiet room. His eyes were tightly shut and waves of frighteningly high temperature continued to spread from his body. There was vaguely some dense white fire seedlings fleeing from the pores all over his body. These flames lingered over the place and wrapped around Xiao Yan's body. Xiao Yan's expression was calm and without any ripples. He did not sense the change around him. At this moment, his mind was completely immersed within the strange heavenly flame merger within his body. Perhaps it was because Xiao Yan was currently in control of 3 types of heavenly flames, but his current refinement of the bone-chilling flame was not as difficult as he had imagined. Under the intense burning of the 3,000 lotus heart flame, the bone-chilling flame already began to vaguely show signs of merging. Although this sign was extremely slow, everything progressed smoothly. There was no unusual changes that was difficult to control appearing. Based on this speed, if nothing unexpected occurred midway, Xiao Yan had the confidence that he could successfully refine the bone-chilling flame within a month. At that time, his body would be in possession of 4 types of heavenly flames. If word of this mysterious thing was to spread, it would likely attract the envy of quite a number of experts. It was already a great blessing for an ordinary person to obtain even 1 heavenly flame. This so-called 4 types was indeed a little bizarre. After all, Even if one put aside the difficulty of finding a heavenly flame, it was likely that no one would dare to keep 4 types of heavenly flame that were filled with destructive strength within their body at the same time. Such an act was basically no different from swallowing a couple of bombs into one's stomach. It was a suicidal act in the eyes of many people. Fortunately, for Xiao Yan, who possessed the flame mantra, this kind of thing, which was impossible in the eyes of others, had become a foundation that allowed him to become a top expert. While Xiao Yan's training gradually progressed on the right track, the temperature of the quiet room also began to increase. At the end, those slowly lingering sandalwood fragrance emitted a puff and directly turned into dust. Under that temperature, even an ordinary elite dozong would not be able to stay for long. If one was to absorb the wild and violent energy that permeated the air, it was sufficient to cause the do qi within one's body to become violent and uncontrolled. Following the flow of time, the aura that spread from Xiao Yan's body also slowly became stronger. Waves after waves of majestic do qi spread out from his body like a great ocean wave. It even brought about some vague crashing sound in the process. With the merger of the bone-chilling flame and the 3000 lotus heart flame, the enormous energy hidden within it had transformed into a pure do qi that poured into Xiao Yan's veins after refinement, causing his aura to slowly rise. Half a month passed by in the blink of an eye under this quiet refinement. After half a month of refinement, the temperature within the quiet room had already been raised until a terrifying level. Moreover, due to this place being completely sealed, it had ended up becoming like a steamer. Qi wave churned and the hot temperature caused numerous dark black crack lines to appear in the sky. Some stone tables and chairs within the quiet room had gradually melted, turning into liquid that slowly dripped down and flowed within the quiet room. Occasionally, an air bubble would appear along with a slight muffled sound. Nearly half of the stone bed had also melted under this high temperature. Xiao Yan, who was seated at its middle, however, did not show any signs of awakening. His breathing was calm. The hot air, which would cause an ordinary person to turn into ashes upon inhalation, became just like 2 air dragons that followed his nostrils and continuously enter his body. Clatter. The stone table melted and liquid dripped quietly. A slight V sound appeared within the quiet room with a rhythm. That stone bed's human figure appeared to have become a statue. It did not react even a little. If it was not because one could still sense a vast and mighty aura that continuously rose, it was likely that anyone would treat the hot wave like a stone statue. The concept of time would become extremely blurry while one trained. Hence, another 10 days had passed while Xiao Yan was seated like a statue. Flower fragrance covered a quiet courtyard. These beautiful and colorful flowers decorated the place until it was full of life. There was a stone pavilion within this courtyard. 3 figures were present within it. However, at this moment, the eyes of these 3 people were staring at a tightly shut stone door at the end of the courtyard. It is almost a month. Why has Xiao Yan not come out? Nalan Yanren looked at the stone door. Her brows were knitted as she softly commented. Yun Yun shook her head slightly and said, "There is no need to worry. With his ability, it is likely that nothing will happen. It is not rare for an elite Do Zun to undertake a couple of months or half a year retreat." Although she spoke in this manner, there was still a faint trace of worry between Yun Yun's brows. If it was an ordinary retreat, she would naturally not be worried. However, ever since Xiao Yan had entered the quiet room, the energy that spread from it became increasingly hot and violent. That feeling was as though the interior of the quiet room was brewing a volcano that was about to erupt. This kind of prelude really caused one to feel uneasy. This kind of unexpected change naturally also stirred the attention of some elders within the flower sect. Although they did not say anything, Yun Yun was aware that their hearts were also worried. After having experienced the terrifying fire lotus that Xiao Yan had used back then, they were really a little afraid that Xiao Yan would cause another earth-shaking destruction and turn this flower sect into ruins. Oh, this fellow really does not allow others to relax. Yun Yun involuntarily rubbed her brows as her heart laughed bitterly. In order to calm the worry of these elders during this period of time, she had did quite a lot of talking. However, this could not go on forever. The energy that was spreading from the quiet room was becoming increasingly violent. At that time, it was likely that even First Elder would adopt some measures. Compared to the worry of the other 2, Qing Lin merely leaned lazily on a pillar. Her soft, seemingly boneless waist and her body was leaned into an alluring arc that vaguely emitted a kind of lazy enchantment. She was born with unusual eyes. Naturally, she was aware of Xiaoyan's current condition. Hence, she was not worried for no reason. It seems that things are going to be the same again. Forget it, let's leave. After waiting quietly for over an hour, Yun Yun looked at the sky before helplessly getting up and said, "What is it?" Nalan Yanran also nodded. She was just about to turn around when a tremor was suddenly felt under her feet, causing her to stumble a little. She hurriedly grabbed the stone pillar beside her. A shock filled her pretty face. "It is transmitted from the quiet room." Yun Yun also paused her footsteps. She sensed a little before her pretty eyes suddenly turned towards the quiet room. Having received the inheritance of Granny Hua, her strength was soaring rapidly. The moment the tremor was transmitted over earlier, she clearly sensed that the quiet room, which had been silent for a long time, suddenly emitting an extremely intense energy fluctuation. Is he about to exit his retreat? Yun Yun muttered softly in her mouth. She softly said, "The activity seems to be a little big. Let's leave this place first." After uttering those words, Yun Yun pressed her foot on the ground. She body rushed to the midair. After which, Qing Lin and Nalan Yanran hurriedly followed. They stood in the sky. Only then did they see an extremely hot fire pillar slowly curling and rising from the top of the quiet room. Bang! The three figures had just rushed to the sky when the roof of the quiet room below suddenly exploded apart. Hot smoke spread out, causing the temperature all around the place to rise rapidly. When the quiet room was blasted open, a vast and mighty aura that had been quiet for an entire month also slowly spread. Soon after, a clear and long roar suddenly resounded from within the quiet room and charged directly towards the clouds. The roar contained an unusually vast and mighty Do Qi. Hence, that roar also appeared like thunder that continuously reverberated across the sky, spreading to every corner of the flower sect. Human figures continued to rush out from all over the flower sect when this roar sounded. Numerous figures stood in the sky. Their eyes were shocked as they looked towards the direction that the roar had originated from. The surprise within the eyes of some of the observant individuals turned into shock when they sensed that aura. This is Xiaoyan? His aura? Why has it suddenly strengthened so greatly? The strength of this aura has likely reached the peak of the 4-star level. This fellow, has he eaten some special pill? His strength had actually soared to such an extent within a short 1 month? Quite a number of elders from the flower sect involuntarily inhaled a breath of cool air when they sensed the strength of this aura. The rate at which this strength was raised was really too frightening. A full 2 stars. If one was to train normally, it would likely take 10 years of effort to achieve it. Yet, Xiaoyan was actually able to complete it within a short 1 month. He is indeed worthy of being Yao Chen's disciple. He's definitely extraordinary. That white-haired old woman, who was the first elder of the flower sect, nodded slightly and muttered while she stood in the sky. The roaring thunder ultimately reached a point where it was about to scatter. At the moment it did so, layers of thick dark clouds suddenly appeared in the blue sky. Wild wind blew across the sky in an unceasing manner. This sudden scene caused everyone to be stunned. Their faces were at a loss. Unusual natural phenomenon. The first elder of the flower sect was also slightly stunned by this scene. A moment later, she appeared to have recalled something. Her eyes suddenly turned towards the direction of the quiet room. A disbelief finally surged onto her eyes. This is the birth of a TN class Qi method? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Continuing from the previous episode 365. Chapter 1294. Quasi-TN class Qi method. When it came to unusual natural phenomenon, they could generally be summarized into 3 types of situation. One was when a high-tier medicinal pill was born. It would attract the pill lightning. The second was when one trained to a certain level. It would attract such a situation. However, this was usually rarely seen. This was because someone who could reach such a level was considered an extremely rare existence even in the entire Do Qi continent. The third possibility was the birth of a TN class Qi method or TN class Do skill. This birth usually did not mean the reappearance of a Qi method or Do skill. Instead, it was a birth from nothing. An example was creation. Only when some TN class Qi method or Do skill was being created would such an unusual natural phenomenon be attracted. The current sky was not covered by pill fragrance. Clearly, it was not the birth of a high-tier medicinal pill. The second possibility could be directly eliminated. Although Xiao Yan was powerful, it was far from sufficient to cause an unusual natural phenomenon. Since this was the case, only the last possibility matched the situation. However, it must be said that this white-haired old woman was indeed experienced. Only a couple of breaths' time had passed, but she had already managed to ascertain the origin of the unusual natural phenomenon through her various guesses. Creating one's own TN-class chi method or dose skill. The white-haired old woman was startled as she watched the quiet room that was emitting a white flame in the distance. Even with her calmness, her face was currently filled with a grave and shocked expression. Creating one's own TN-class chi method or dose skill. Just how many people in this current continent had the ability to achieve this? Based on common sense, forget about Xiao Yan, even Yao Chen, who had advanced into the Ban Shen class, would likely not possess such an ability. Yet, regardless of how great a disbelief was present in her heart, the situation that appeared in front of her caused her to have no choice but to accept this harsh reality. A moment later, she withdrew her emotion. A bitter smile surfaced on her face. It was indeed the case of the younger generation surpassing the old. Compared to such an outstanding young man, old fellows like themselves could only feel ashamed. No wonder he can be accepted by Yao Chen as a disciple. Such a talent is indeed rare. The white-haired old woman sighed softly. Her eyes flickered slightly. After this matter, her heart had truly begun to think highly of Xiao Yan. Although she was considered quite polite to Xiao Yan in the past, that was after all on the account of Yao Lao's face. Xiao Yan being able to defeat Yao Hua Liangjun with his 2-star Do Zun strength had caused her to be surprised, but that was it. Yao Hua Liangjun might appear strong in the eyes of others, but he did not pose the slightest threat. If it was not because Yao Hua Liangjun was a member of the Profound Sky sect, it was likely that she would not have allowed this fellow to leave smoothly back then. Although she had only think highly of Xiao Yan in the past because of Yao Lao, it had completely changed at this moment. Creating one's own TN-class chi method or dose skill. This ability was something that even she could not compare with. Xiao Yan had given her too many surprises. It was to an extent that caused her, as the first elder of the flower sect, to threat him seriously. This person's future achievement will definitely be extraordinary. Yun Yun's good relationship with him is also beneficial for the flower sect. The white-haired old woman smiled faintly when she thought of this. She muttered to herself, "Senior sister, your eyesight is indeed extremely accurate." Seeing the layers of dark clouds spread apart in the sky, all the disciples from the flower sect had stunned faces. This change in the weather was far too unpredictable. Of course, there were also some shrewd people whose eyes turned towards the direction where Xiao Yan was undertaking a retreat after muttering for a moment. Such an unusual phenomenon had occurred the moment Xiao Yan was about to leave his retreat. It was likely that no one would believe that these two were unrelated. Bang! The quiet room once again trembled in front of the countless number of gazes. A hot chi pillar shot out from within. A human figure was standing steadily with a royal demeanor on the top of this pillar. The one who had appeared was naturally Xiao Yan, who had undertaken a 1-month retreat. At this moment, he was also slightly startled when he saw the unusual phenomenon in the sky. A moment later, he appeared to have understood something. He frowned slightly and gently waved his sleeve. After waving his sleeve, an invisible spiritual ripple immediately spread out from between his brows. When this ripple spread, the layers of dark cloud in the sky also ceased churning. After which, they slowly scattered amidst numerous stunned gazes. The darkness in the sky also gradually disappeared after the final dark cloud disappeared. A warm sunlight once again scattered down and shone on this mountain range that was covered by a sea of flower. Has it evolved to a TN-class chi method? Xiao Yan stared at his own palm after the dark cloud scattered. Immediately, he shut his eyes. A thought passed through his mind and the flame mantra was once again circulated. Hoo! When the flame mantra was circulating, the natural energy within 1,000 feet radius suddenly surged over intensely like floodwaters. Immediately, waves after waves of shocking energy continuously poured into Xiao Yan's body in front of numerous stunned eyes. Xiao Yan's body did not reject these natural energy that were filled with a great amount of impurities. Any impurities would be immediately turned into nothing while the heavenly flame rose. The rate at which Do Qi circulated within his body was also over 10 times more rapid than before. This kind of mad rapidness did not only show itself on the circulating speed. There was also a drastic change in terms of absorption, refinement, accommodation and other aspects when compared with before. Based on Xiaoyan's current condition, it was likely that he would no longer end up needing to immediately swallow medicinal pills to replenish his dou qi like in the past should he use the Annihilation Fire Lotus. The current him could really be described as having the capital to squander. A mouthful of turbid air that contained a lot of impurities moved along Xiaoyan's throat and was exhaled. When he sensed an unprecedented feeling of being filled, a joyous smile that could not be suppressed involuntarily surfaced on his face. He might possess the ability to fight across levels, but all of these required the exhaustion of an extremely vast amount of dou qi. Hence, he had to be careful each time he used them. He was afraid that someone might take advantage of the opening after he used it and enter a weakened state. Fortunately, this kind of worry would likely rarely occur from now onwards unless it was some special circumstances. It can be considered to be a TN-class low-rank Qi method. However, it should have only just broken through the D-class high level. It is rumored that when a true TN-class Qi method is used, it would immediately be able to absorb all of the energy within 1,000 feet for one's own use. What I have activated earlier does have some gap when compared to it. Xiaoyan revealed an expression of deep thought. It was unexpected that evolving to the TN class would actually be this harsh. Even the bone-chilling flame was only able to get flame mantra to reach the quasi-TN class Qi method level. Fortunately, regardless of whether it was quasi-TN class or a true TN class, it had after all reached that level. This kind of transformation would also be a drastic one. My strength is currently also at the 4-star Dou Zoom level. Xiaoyan sensed the interior of his body. The swallowing of the bone-chilling flame this time around had actually only allowed him to raise his strength by 2-star. Although he was mentally prepared, this kind of result still caused Xiaoyan to be quite dismayed. If other elite Dou Zuns were to be aware of this thought of his, it was likely that they would immediately spit out a mouthful of fresh blood. 10 years or even decades of training was completed by him within a short 1 month. If he was still dispirited because of it, they would likely have to directly find a stone and knock their heads to death. 4-star. So be it. After feeling despair for a short moment, Xiaoyan swiftly withdrew his mind. This result was something that he had expected. At this moment, he had already swallowed 4 types of heavenly flames. Although the strength of a heavenly flame was great, anything that was eaten in large numbers would likely result in it being unable to fully unleash its effect like before. Based on Xiaoyan's guess, if he was to swallow a heavenly flame that was ranked 15th and higher at this moment, the effect would likely be extremely weak. It would have difficulty raising his strength by even a star. It looks like I must specifically find those heavenly flames that are ranked at the front when swallowing heavenly flames in the future. Xiaoyan was speechless when he thought until this point. A heavenly flame was it itself rare. Those ranked at the front were extremely rare. Even if one was to find it, attempting to capture and refine it was also extremely difficult. Based on his guess, it appeared that Xiaoyan's path of swallowing heavenly flames in the future would become incomparably difficult. Xiaoyan smiled bitterly, shaking his head and sighed. All he could do was to accept his fate. Although raising his strength by 2-star did not meet the standards of his discerning eyes, a small mosquito was also meet. If he was to use the Skyfire 3 mysterious change with his current strength, he would no longer need to rely on the Annihilation Fire Lotus to battle with Yaohua Liangjun should he end up meeting the latter. Even in a head-on collision, the advantage that Yaohua Liangjun could gain would likely be quite small. Forget about that Yaohua Liangjun. Even if I meet that so-called 9th Tianjun of the Hall of Soul, I will also be able to fight with him and withdraw in one piece. Xiaoyan involuntarily sighed in relief when he thought of this. Ever since he had witnessed the strength of 9th Tianjun and the others back then, he had been vaguely feeling some pressure within his heart. This fellow was merely just a 9th Tianjun. Above him definitely had a 7th Tianjun, 6th Tianjun and even the 1st Tianjun. Fortunately, his current strength had already soared by a certain extent. He might not dare to say that he could be unafraid of these people just because of it, but his heart would at least feel more at ease. There was no need for him to be constantly nervous. Moreover, even if he could not defeat them when they fought in the future, he would definitely let the other party suffer. Just how long are you going to continue dreaming here? A gentle voice resounded helplessly beside Xiaoyan's ear while he was in deep thought. Xiao Yan lifted his head, only to see a beautiful face appearing in front of him. There was even some rebuking expression on her pretty face. It was extremely alluring. Xiao Yan smiled at Yun Yun only to suddenly extend his hand and grabbed Yun Yun's hand. Seeing Xiao Yan acting in this manner in public, Yun Yun's extremely beautiful face became an embarrassing red. She knitted her brows and spoke in an embarrassed and angry manner. "Little bastard, could you have really gotten addicted to acting like a rogue? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible." Continuing from the previous episode 366. Chapter 1295. Tearing the seal. Xiao Yan was startled when he heard the embarrassed voice of Yun Yun. He looked at the latter's reddened face and said, "I am helping you look at the Do Chi seal within your body." Yun Yun was startled when she heard this. She continued to stare at Xiao Yan somewhat doubtfully. A moment later, her struggling hand finally weakened. A helpless expression also surfaced on Xiao Yan's face when he saw this. His hand was placed on Yun Yun's arm before he shut his eyes. A trace of spiritual strength flowed along his hand and entered the latter's body. Yun Yun sighed gently when Xiao Yan shut his eyes. However, her face still had an embarrassing red color remaining on it. Regardless of what the intention of this fellow was, this place was ultimately a public one. Many disciples and elders from the flower sect were below. Just how it would look like if they saw this. Xiao Yan slowly opened his eyes while Yun Yun was complaining in her heart. At this moment, there was an additional solemnness on his face. The Do Chi seal within Yun Yun's body caused even him to feel shocked. Based on what teacher had said, that Granny Hua should be an elite Dozun whose strength had reached that of an 8 or 9-star Dozun. The Do Chi from her entire lifetime could completely shatter an ordinary Dozun. Xiao Yan's eyes flickered while he mused. Yun Yun's body did indeed possess a vast and mighty Do Chi that caused even him to feel shocked. However, these Do Chi was being completely sealed by an extremely powerful seal. With Yun Yun's strength, she would require quite a long time in order to break the seal and control these vast and mighty Do Chi. That Granny Hua is too cautious. The seal that she has placed is too strong. With your current strength, the rate at which you can refine it can be a little faster. Xiao Yan released Yun Yun's hand, raised his head and said, "You are also aware that the seal is extremely powerful. With my strength, it is impossible for me to break it. All I can do is to absorb those Do Chi that seeped out from the seal. Even though this was the case, my training speed is much faster when compared to the past." Yun Yun knitted her brows and said, "It is safer to refine all of these Do Chi as soon as possible. Otherwise, if you end up meeting a strong person, it is likely that that person might remove the Do Chi seal without due care for your life." Xiao Yan spoke seriously. All of the Do Chi left behind by an 8 or 9-star Dozun was quite a tempting treasure. It was difficult to be certain that some experts would not end up having other wayward thoughts. Yun Yun also nodded slightly when she heard this. She understood that Xiao Yan would not lie to her. However, it was not that she did not wish to speed up the rate of refinement, but she was really unable to do anything to that seal. "Relax, leave the matter of the seal to me. I will resolve this matter before leaving. Otherwise, I will really be unable to be at ease." Xiao Yan smiled involuntarily and said when he saw her expression. An unknown emotion surged up Yun Yun's heart as she observed the smiling young man in front of her. The feeling of having someone to rely on was really good. She had brought Nalan Yanren and roamed all over the place during these years. Although her strength could be considered to be at the top within the Jianan Empire, it was nothing in this central plains where numerous experts were present. Two ladies who possessed such beauty naturally attracted a lot of attention. Hence, Yun Yun brought Nalan Yanren to join the flower sect. All she sought was some peace. However, she had really never thought about the position of the flower sect's chief. "Thank you." Yun Yun gently inhaled a breath of air. She suppressed the somewhat weak emotion in her heart and whispered. Xiao Yan frowned when he heard this. He stared at the beautiful face and asked, "Is it necessary?" "Huh?" Yun Yun raised her pretty eyes after appearing to hear the displeased tone that Xiao Yan had used. She looked at the frown of the latter before involuntarily smiling. A faint warmth was present in her heart. Xiao Yan felt a little sorry at having caused such a great commotion within the flower sect. He specially apologized to the first elder of the flower sect. Now that the first elder had the intention to befriend Xiao Yan and the Falling Star Pavilion, she would naturally not be concerned about this. Hence, this small matter just passed in this way. The so-called unnatural phenomenon had also gradually faded after the disciples of the flower sect had talked about it for 2 to 3 days. This was also as Xiao Yan desired. He did not wish to be looked at by many strange eyes each time he went out. A faint fragrance lingered within a room that was filled with a pale pink color. At a glance, one would understand that this was likely the room of a certain lady. I will forcefully tear a crack line later on in order to aid your refinement in the future. It might be a little pain. You must endure it. Xiao Yan looked at Yun Yun, who was seated on the soft bed. His thought also shifted from this room that had a pink color before coughing dryly and said. Yun Yun agreed softly. At this moment, her face was still a little red. This was because even until now, she did not know why she would suddenly become hot-headed and bring Xiao Yan to her own room. It was fine just using any room. Yet, she must bring him here. This was especially case when Xiao Yan displayed a strange expression after just entering this place. It caused her to have the impulse of burying her head into the ground. Xiao Yan laughed dryly when he saw that the tip of Yun Yun's ears were still red. After which, he exhaled a long breath of air. He tossed aside the distracting thoughts and gradually focused his mind. After his mind became focused, Xiao Yan curled his fingers and a wisp of purple-brown flame that contained traces of dense whiteness within it slowly appeared on his finger. This flame was naturally something that was created after having merged the bone-chilling flame with the other flames. Currently, the 4 types of heavenly flames had completely merged together. Both its color and its might had become greater. Moreover, this kind of heavenly flame currently gave one a somewhat unusual feeling. The extremely heat hid a kind of extremely cold force. The difficulty in dealing with it had multiplied by a couple of times. One could imagine the harm it would cause the other party if this kind of unusual force invaded the other party's body when fighting other people. Xiao Yan's expression had become grave when the flame appeared. An instant later, his fingers heavily pressed on Yun Yun's arm in a lightning-like fashion. Kai, although Xiao Yan did not strengthen the temperature of the flame, the high temperature that the body of the flame contained still burnt the clothes on Yun Yun's back into ashes, revealing her naked jade-like alluring curve. Oh! The coolness that had suddenly appeared on her back also caused Yun Yun to exclaim. Her face reddened immediately. However, a solemn cry that was transmitted from beside her ear caused her to have no choice but to withdraw the ripple within her heart. Focus. Protect your own veins. I am about to break the seal. Yun Yun clenched her silver teeth in the face of this grave cry by Xiao Yan. She forcefully suppressed the fluctuation within her heart and swiftly focused his mind. Xiao Yan's hand, where a flame was lingering on, pointed on Yun Yun's back. That smooth jade-like back immediately revealed a purple-red shot. Waves after waves of hot flames followed this spot and continuously poured into Yun Yun's body. The heavenly flames suddenly invaded in a large-scale fashion. The high temperature also spread, causing Yun Yun to painfully circulate her do qi in a hurried fashion. It wrapped around every vein. Only then did she feel a little better. Under Xiao Yan's control, the heavenly flame quietly shuttled past the many veins before finally reaching the spot in Yun Yun's body where her do qi was sealed. He prepared a little before letting out a cry and charged ruthlessly towards the strong seal. Bang! The two collided. Yun Yun's lovely body paused immediately. The do qi within his body shook intensely at this moment. Waves after waves of intense pain continued to spread from within her body. Xiao Yan's face was grave. The toughness of the seal had exceeded his expectations. With his current strength, it was impossible for him to continue to destroy it. Moreover, if the seal was completely destroyed, the vast and mighty do qi that surged out would instantly destroy Yun Yun's body. Of course, his aim was not this. All he wanted to do was to cut and form a crack line on the seal. With his current strength and the help of the heavenly flame, it should not be too difficult to achieve it. Bang bang bang! A continuous amount of flame surged into Yun Yun's body. After which, it collided against the tough seal without fearing death. Numerous low and deep sound repeatedly resounded within Yun Yun's body. That intense pain also became increasingly worse. Fortunately, she was aware that this was a critical matter. She clenched her teeth tightly and did not emit any sound. I do not believe that I cannot even form a crack line on you. Xiao Yan frowned slightly after striking at the seal for a long time to no avail. Immediately, he inhaled a deep breath of air. He could already sense that the spot on the seal where he had attacked had began to fluctuate. Immediately, he clenched his teeth. An unusually dense flame suddenly charged into Yun Yun's body. Immediately, it formed numerous spinning flames as it violently collided onto the seal that was rippling. Bang! The collision this time around was unprecedented. Powerful force spread apart from the point of collision. Grug! The force spread and Yun Yun's face paled almost instantly. A mouthful of fresh blood was spat out. That force was really too powerful. If it was not because she had used the Do Chi to protect her veins earlier, it was likely that even her veins would have been completely broken during this collision. A mouthful of fresh blood was spat out. However, Yun Yun's aura did not weaken as a result. Instead, waves after waves of powerful Do Chi fluctuations suddenly surged from within her body. The strength of that fluctuation was such that it even forced back Xiaoyan's finger, which was in contact with Yun Yun's fingers. What powerful Do Chi! A surprise flashed across Xiaoyan's eyes when his finger was forced away. Yun Yun's shut eyes were suddenly opened as she sat on the bed. Powerful Do Chi erupted out as though they were real substance. The table a short distance in front emitted a crack sound before shattering into dust. The seal had been broken, huh? A joy surfaced on Yun Yun's face when she saw this scene. She suddenly raised her head. Her eyes looked towards Xiaoyan, only to find that the latter was staring at her with a strange expression. Yun Yun was startled when she saw this gaze of Xiaoyan. Immediately, she lowered her head slightly. Her face became fiery hot almost instantly. This was because the clothes on her body had completely burst apart due to the eruption of her Do Chi earlier. At that moment, a naked beautiful body sat enchantingly within the room. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Continuing from the previous episode 367. Chapter 1296, interception and exclamation was emitted from Yun Yun's mouth while her face turned completely red. Immediately, her hand was waved suddenly. Wind danced and the soft blanket on the bed flew up before completely wrapping around the alluring body. Yun Yun's expression only became a little better after her lovely body was hidden within the blanket. She lifted her pretty face and stared at Xiaoyan with embarrassment and anger. She demanded, "Why are you still watching?" Although she was currently covered by a blanket, the blanket was quite thin. When it covered over Yun Yun's lovely body, it still ended up revealing an alluring curve. After being set off by the bright red face that was filled with shyness, the scene was sufficient to cause quite a number of men to bleed wildly from their nostrils. Cough. Xiaoyan coughed dryly. He withdrew his eyes in an extremely calm manner and said, "This has nothing to do with me. You are the one who blasted it apart." Hearing these words of Xiaoyan, Yun Yun involuntarily felt speechless and furious despite usually being calm. This brat was actually someone who proclaimed innocence despite having taken advantage of her. Xiaoyan did not dare to be overly entangled over this topic when he saw Yun Yun was showing signs of becoming mad. He hurriedly asked, "How do you feel now?" "All right. A crack line has been torn on the seal by you. Currently, there's quite a lot of Do Chi continuously flowing out from the seal. This speed is coincidentally within the boundary that I can refine." Yun Yun snapped. However, the redness on her face gradually faded. "Yes, that's fine." Xiaoyan nodded slightly. He voiced his thoughts. The Do Chi that is left behind by that Granny Wah is really too frightening. If you can completely refine it, you might be able to reach the height of hers when she was alive. Moreover, you are still young. There is a great amount of room for you to improve. Should you end up gaining some great opportunity in the future, it is not impossible for you to even reach the Do Sheng class. Do Sheng. Yun Yun was involuntarily startled when she heard this legendary height. Immediately, she shook her head helplessly. That matter was too far away. Being able to leap to the Do Zun class during these years was already a great blessing that the heavens had given her. As for whatever Do Sheng, she had really never thought about it. I have quite a number of enemies in the Central Plains. Moreover, each of them are extremely fierce. Ha ha, if you become an elite Do Sheng in the future, I can take shelter under this big tree of yours." Xiao Ina joked. Yun Yun looked at the young face, which was covered with a warm smile, in a stunned manner when she heard Xiaoyan's joke. She was a little quiet and felt a heartache. Everyone could only see his glory and achievement on the surface. However, they forget just how much hard work and effort he had put in to reach this level. When she first met Xiaoyan back then, this youth, who appeared tender but a little stubborn, dared to train within the dangerous magical beast mountain range. After all the storm all these years, the danger that he had experienced was also countless number of times greater than that at the magical beast mountain range back then. I will refine Granny Hua's Do Chi as soon as possible, and I'll also spend effort to slowly control the flower sect. Yun Yun's entire body appeared to have shrunk under the thin blanket as his soft voice was emitted. Xiao Yan was startled when he heard these somewhat baffling words of Yun Yun. He watched the pretty face and finally appeared to have understood something. He was momentarily speechless. A favor from a beauty was something that was most difficult to accept. The atmosphere within the room had suddenly become a little enchanting. A moment later, Xiao Yan let out a dry cough and broke the silence. After which, he took out a jade bottle from within the storage ring. Some purple-brown danwons were stored within the jade bottle. An extremely hot energy was vaguely emitted from the medicinal bottle. These are flame-leaving pills that I have refined. Each of them contained a trace of strength from a heavenly flame. You can consume one when you refine the Do Chi of the seal in the future. It will aid you in increasing the speed of refinement. At the same time, it will also allow your Do Chi to be refined until it is extremely pure. Xiao Yan placed the jade bottle gently on the bed and smilingly spoke to Yun Yun. Yes. Yun Yun received the jade bottle and nodded with a slight smile. I will leave tomorrow. If you end up meeting some trouble that you cannot resolve in the future, you can come to the Falling Star Pavilion to look for me. You are leaving tomorrow, huh? Yun Yun said. The hand which she used to hold the jade bottle tightened a little when she heard this. I cannot remain here for too long. Otherwise, I'm afraid that I might end up attracting the experts from the Hall of Soul. At that time, I would end up implicating the flower sect. Xiao Yan spoke seriously. Yun Yun was not someone who failed to see the larger picture. Although she felt some dismay in her heart, she still ended up nodding. She softly said, Yes, you should be careful. Xiao Yan smiled and nodded. He once again gave Yun Yun some instruction before turning around and left this lady's room, where a fragrance lingered. Yun Yun's silver teeth bit her red lips as she watched Xiao Yan's back, which was leaving. She softly muttered, It has been so many years, but I'm still unable to get rid of this little enemy. Since I am unable to escape, I shall put in the effort again for you. Originally, Yun Yun was not really interested in increasing her strength. All she wanted to do was to find a quiet place to pass the rest of her life when she came to the Central Plains. However, who could have expected that even though this was the case, that person, who was buried deep within her heart, would once again appear in front of her. Only when she met him again did she realize that it was impossible for this feeling to be forgotten with the flow of time. Instead, it would be brewed by time until it became increasingly mellow. She would not say anything regarding such a feeling. All that she wanted was to remain behind him and quietly providing him some help. This was because Yun Yun was aware that Xiao Yan was carrying too much on his back. He was also too tired. She wanted to help share a little of his burden. After having resolved the problem of the seal for Yun Yun, Xiao Yan continued to remain within the flower sect for one day. After which, he led Qing Lin and Yun Yun to bid farewell to the first elder of the flower sect. The first elder of the flower sect felt a little regretful with regards of Xiao Yan's swift departure. She wanted to get him to stay, but seeing that Xiao Yan had made up his mind, it was inappropriate for her to stop him. All she could do was to allow the two to leave. After saying his goodbye, Xiao Yan and Qing Lin directly left the flower sect. After which, the latter summoned the 9 serene deep-ground python and once again hurried towards the Falling Star Pavilion. Cloud was absent in the azure sky within thousands of kilometers. Suddenly, an enormous black figure rushed past the distant sky with lightning-like speed. A deafening rushing wind sound rumbled continuously in the sky, attracting quite a number of gazes. This rapidly moving enormous black figure was naturally Xiao Yan and Qing Lin, who had left the flower sect for about 2 days. Both of them were basically traveling during these 2 days and did not take many breaks along the way. Although using the 9 serene deep-ground python to travel was a little eye-catching, it would seldom attract any trouble. This was because everyone knew of the strength of the 9 serene deep-ground python, which was one of the 3 great tribes in the magical beast world. Unless there was some special circumstances, otherwise no one would easily offend them. Young Master Xiao Yan, we have basically left the territory of the flower sect's influence. In another few days, we should be able to reach the Falling Star Pavilion. Qing Lin's eyes swept in all directions while standing on the enormous body of the 9 serene deep-ground python. After which, she turned her head and spoke to Xiao Yan, who was seated behind her. Understood. Xiao Yan nodded slightly. His hand rubbed the 9 serene deep-ground python under him, and the image of a 7-colored huge heaven-swallowing python flashed across his mind. Kai Lin, I wonder if your womb really possessed the bloodline of the Xiao clan. A complicated expression flashed across Xiao Yan's eyes when he thought about Kai Lin. He wondered how this Queen Medusa, who had once chased after him until he was forced to flee, was. With her strength, it was likely that she would have few opponents who could match her in that region, right? Young Master Xiao Yan. The pretty face of Qing Lin by the side changed a little while Xiao Yan had sunk into his memory. She softly cried out, "What is it?" Xiao Yan was pulled back from his thoughts by the cry. He was startled as he asked, "Something seems to be wrong." Qing Lin softly replied. Xiao Yan's eyes immediately narrowed when he heard this. His gaze slowly swept around him. At this moment, they were in the sky above a sparsely populated mountain range. However, it was surprising that there was actually not the slightest magical beast roar in this mountain range. It was as though the place was a death region. Xiao Yan slowly stood up. He got Qing Lin to halt the 9 serene deep-ground python. After which, his eyes paused on an empty space a short distance in front. He spoke faintly, "Since you have come, why are you hiding yourself? Don't you agree? Yahua Liangjun, brat, your perception is quite good." The space in front became distorted after Xiao Yan's words sounded. Immediately, a couple of figures appeared from nowhere. At the same time, a vast and mighty aura also spread over from all directions. There were a total of 4 people who had appeared. Amongst them was Yahua Liangjun, who had suffered a blow from the annihilation fire lotus of Xiao Yan back then. The other 3 were all expressionless elders in gray robes. The auras of these 3 people were not any weaker than Yahua Liangjun. Looking at the badge on their chest, they were surprisingly all from the Profound Sky Sect. Xiao Yan, you have ruined an important matter of my Profound Sky Sect. Do you really think you can just leave like this? Do you think that my Profound Sky Sect do not dare to do anything to you just because Yao Chen had advanced to a Ban Sheng? Yahua Liangjun gently flapped the foldable fan in his hand. The smile on his face contained a dense emotion. Xiao Yan glanced at this fellow and spoke indifferently. You were able to wait for so long. I think that someone has informed you, right? For example, Hua Jin of the Flower Sect? Xiao Yan's eyes turned towards the forest below after his voice sounded. A figure had appeared from that spot. It was Hua Jin from the Flower Sect. At this moment, the latter was staring at him with a face filled with murderous intent. She coldly laughed. You have ruined a big matter of this chief. Today, you shall use your life as compensation. As for that slut Yun Yun, this chief will finish her off sooner or later. Xiao Yan, just surrender and return with the old me to the Profound Sky Sect. On the account of Yao Chen's face, my Profound Sky Sect will treat you well. Otherwise, that gray-robed elder, who was the leader, opened his mouth faintly at this moment. A dense killing intent had suddenly surged in his last sentence. Otherwise, this place shall be where your bones will be buried today. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible.